And we are live. Hello and welcome to Fermenting Opinions. I'm your host, David Poseidon, and this is Fermenting Opinions, the podcast in search of a more palatable political ferment. This is May 22nd, 2022. I'm joined by Haji, Daniel, Kyle, and Jay Zilla. And we are here to talk about the mass shooting that took place in Buffalo a little over a week ago. It was May 14th. A young man, 18-year-old Peyton Gendron, walked into this place is called Tops Marketplace. Is that right, Haji?
Top supermarket, but yeah,
Top supermarket. And killed 10 people, wounding an additional 3 others. Widely believed to be understated.
Man.
There you go.
Pay for our city, man. Don't pay for us, pay for the city, man. Oh, look at that.
No, that's fine. Before I even continue this, Haji is there at location. He's at this where it took place, basically. So if this was another circumstance, this would almost be entertaining. That we've got somebody on location, quote unquote. But he's here, kind of checking out the memorial that's been set up around that area. So, Haji, appreciate you going out there first of all.
Yeah, it's the least I could do. I've been kind of avoiding it, mainly because of the fact that I have my own suffering issues for PTSD.
Mm-hmm.
So this brings back a lot of those kind of feelings and issues. Just so you guys know, so the supermarket has been fenced off.
I'm going to set you to full screen, so I want people to be able to see what you've got going on here. There we go. Right. Go ahead.
Hey, so the supermarket's been fenced off. You can say that. The supermarket's been fenced off. Thankfully, they are running a shuttle service at least for residents, so they can go and get groceries. One of the big, and I'm kind of jumping in right ahead, even though we didn't finish the introductions for everybody.
It's
one of the main issues or kind of reasons why this supermarket right here is so important is because this was a supermarket that was protested for, and the protest essentially won to end a food exile. I hate calling it food deserts because deserts are like unintentional. This is an intentional thing. Mm-hmm. So this is the only supermarket within about a 3-mile radius of where we are.
Mm-hmm.
It is completely in the black side of town or the black area of town. Strangely enough, this area is actually called the Fruit Belt because about 3 streets over, there's a grouping of about 7 streets that are named after fruit, like grape and lemon and orange.
Okay.
So one of the campaign slogans when they were doing the protest was, there's a cross between a Wyman and Vizsla. Serves up. She's
your dog's too much of a celebrity, man.
Of course. So the one of the campaign solutions was the fact that we were in the fruit belt with no fresh fruit.
Yeah.
So Kauai. So there's the memorials on each corner. They've actually put the food truck that's over there is actually for local residents.
Okay.
I'm getting up to the memorial at the corner, which I'll kind of set my time down time-wise. So this is the main one where people have been stuff. But we've been putting it on every corner. Kauai, going around. Originally, before they fenced it off, this area right here was the original memorial site.
Mm-hmm.
The people who own the Family Dollar in this plaza actually kind of started this section, which is actually kind of a good thing. Try to get my other side. So that's Malay.
And what are those things on the ground over there? Are these just signs and stuff? Looks like maybe a couple of them fell over.
Yeah, so you've got BLM.
Gotcha.
Signs. Most of the signs signage that's actually here, which is kind of the way they've intentionally done it. A lot of the signage is mainly done by family members and church members of those who are following. And that's kind of the way they have proposed for it to be.
I hear you.
I'm going to head back over towards the car so I can not have my dog be the superstar and interrupt us the whole time.
For sure.
Look, I can do it from here a little bit better. All right, so there's the supermarket behind us.
Yeah.
Where the carts are, the second cart is about where he parked and started walking in fatigues with the gun. And people started running before he ever actually got fully through.
Which makes sense, but it's also awful. Yeah, I understand he showed up kind of like in full like body armor kind of thing.
Yeah, he was already ready to go. He came out, and this is an area where it's not a it's very odd to see somebody in camo in this area. Not like it's a suburb area or country area where people just wear it on a regular basis. So it was completely obvious that there was an issue and there was something weird. One of the managers who's been kind of dealing with her own issues, she asked him to leave when he was doing his scouting routine. He came a couple days prior to it happening and was walking around because this is a supermarket that's in the city, milady. The managers often have to, kind of shoo the homeless from just meandering around the store.
And he was just out there like creeping around, kind of checking the place out. And
yeah, he apparently did, like an hour or so, just kind of walk around the area and around the tops.
Gotcha.
I do not know how aware of the significance of this tops he was aware of, because of the fact that this is essentially the only one in the predominantly black section of the town.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you if you thought the selection of this site was particular for that reason, knowing that this was the only grocery store in the area for a good bit for local residents.
I'm sure that he picked it because it was the supermarket in the black side of town. Whether or not he was aware of the fight that happened to get it to be this way is the part that I'm not sure about.
Gotcha.
There have been a relative good amount of stories that were done prior to this happening. Remind me as I get back to the car.
I'm gonna take you off the full screen here. All right.
So prior to him, got me. So prior to him coming, there has been a lot of coverage for this tops specifically, because it's added to the campaigns in cities like Rochester and Syracuse, and other cities to try and use the exact same techniques to end their food deserts and get their stuff a little bit straighter. Gotcha. So people can eat real food. One of the downsides of this is they had planned, or they were in semi discussions about building another tops further into another section of the black side of town. And according to the company, they're not thinking of doing that. They never technically said they were going to, so they don't have to say that they're no longer doing it, but it is not in the plans. And that had been part of the discussion that many people had been having up to this point, with the idea of trying to, help people and help things work out better.
Well, that's awful. And you I'm going to go to other people here in a minute. Well, you turned all sideways.
Go ahead.
I don't know what's going on with that. I was going to say, because you mentioned before we started, if I could try and get us out, that you actually knew somebody, one of the victims, or through an acquaintance, we'll say.
Yeah. So
and I'll even say it the way I said it before. So
There you
my half brother's half sister, so I call her my quarter sister.
go. Okay.
Her oldest daughter's father was one of the people slain. He was the one that was here picking up the birthday cake for his 4-year-old. So you can only imagine the pain that he's going to have for the rest of his life, knowing that his dad didn't come home from getting him a birthday cake, essentially.
Yeah.
And I think when we're going on the victim side, it's hilarious how perfectly cowardice it is that most of the victims were elderly. The other big thing that is kind of perfectly disheartening is nearly every person that he killed was a active member in the community.
Mm.
There is nobody here that really wasn't nobody who was really shot that wasn't somebody that hadn't been working for like the Urban League or giving out food at the food bank or active member at their church, deacon wise. Like whether he meant to or not, he came in and killed a lot of the more important members of the community.
Gotcha. Do you think that, and I guess we can only speculate on that, but again, do you think there was anything deliberate behind that? Like knowing this would be like after church let out or something like that, and they're more likely to be folks like that at the grocery store, or like it's a grocery store in a black neighborhood. I'm going to go shoot it up because I'm a big old racist. Like
I think he intentionally planned it for the amount of people that would be there, not for the kind of people that would be there.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And by kind of people, I mean people who are involved, because he was going there intentionally to kill black people.
Right.
If you have not seen the video, there is a part of the video where he is shooting through the supermarket, comes up on a white person that is crouched down, a white guy who's crouched down in an aisle, and says, "Oh, sorry," and then goes back to trying to shoot more black people.
Yeah.
So
definitely targeting black people only. I think one white person did get hurt or something like that, but again.
There's one, I believe one that she's mixed, I believe, that died.
No.
There were multiple black people or white people that were shot. As a small connection, the pharmacist that had fragments that survived her surgery, she is the sister of a girl who went to high school with me, who was working out here, who strangely enough moved over in this area specifically because of the tops that was being opened, and because she is one of those like get involved kind of people.
For sure.
But she thankfully survived.
Yeah. God, that's awful. Paco from Who Dat Podcast said, and apologized and turns back to shooting us, which he's talking about what you said when we came across that one white person said, "Oh, sorry," and went back to it. I'll just go around the horn at this point, and if anyone else just kind of wants to give their like off the cuff kind of reactions essentially to what we've been talking about. I could start over with Jay Zilla. You got some thoughts you want to share?
Yeah, a few. So you may have to come back to me because I'm a bit of a yammerer. So one, I put in the private chat there, David. I don't know if you can see that or not.
Oh, I do see it now at the bottom. Yeah, sorry, I can't always.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the Washington Post and other publications actually talked about how the Buffalo shooting suspect wrote of plans 5 months ago. Right. So they went through over 600 pages of messages. And I'll read you an excerpt here that says, a review of more than 600 pages of messages by the Washington Post found that Gendron resolved in December to kill those he slurred as replacers, and decided in February to target Buffalo's Tops grocery store based on its local African-American population. Now, these are his own words.
Right.
And even in March, he did a reconnaissance-style trip just to take a look. So there's no question as to his motives if you believe his own writings.
For sure. Yeah, and I really don't think there's any question of that it's obvious that, but from what I've seen, we'll just call it the right-wing response to this is to both deny that replacement theory is a thing that they've been promoting, and also to blame people on the left for doing it at the same time, which is really bizarre. Because it's not really denial at all. It's a confirmation, but also saying, "Oh, look, it's not really our fault." And you
But I
know,
don't-
where were the parents? You know, this kind of nonsense.
Right. I don't blame them. I'm a transitioning Democrat, so I'm moving to the middle, like as far as the middle as possible as an independent.
Yeah.
I'm not happy with a few things there, but we don't get what we deserve in this country. You get what you negotiate for, and if you don't utilize the voting power, your voice on these microphones, or you're working, you're spending dollars, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then you get exactly what you deserve. And I'm not talking about the victims here or anything like that, but as far as government, I always leave that all on my show, right? Because they're just a reflection of what we've allowed in this country.
Yeah, what we have is the product of the incentive structure that put them there. That's
Right.
which is also why I've given up officially on parties as well. I'm a left-leaning independent. To some people, that doesn't make any difference. It does to me. So I hear you there. And I will come back to you because there's lots of different directions we can go from there, but I want to kind of keep moving. Daniel, I wanted to get to you next, sir. Go ahead.
This I tend to look for patterns and systems because being an engineer, everything to me is about systems and patterns. And this shooting remind me of the young man that went into that church and had Bible study with the members and was there for a good minute before he got up and did what he did with the idea of starting a race war. You know what I mean?
You're talking about
And
Dylan
this
Rose?
young man, yeah, I don't like saying their names. But
I hear you.
This young man.
That's just
seemed
for
to have
reference
that
for other
same-
people, but I hear you.
Right. No, you're fine. You are the host of the. You need people to know what I'm talking about, so that they can actually go and research it. This young man had that same trajectory, and he's not too different from the one that did the shooting a while back, where we had a trial where that 17-year-old also ran through a Black Lives Matter, protest, to protect, right, to be the law. They seem to be these young men that are being, I don't want to say programmed, but they seem to be being led down a very dangerous road. And these 17, 18, 19, in the group between 18 and 24, they seem to be used as like the first fire, the one, trying to, start the fire. And the hope is to start a race war. I mean, I don't want to imagine it. I don't want to say it out loud because every day I'm seeing like there are people trying to start this fire, not knowing it will consume all of us. It will destroy all of us. And the people who are to really, really blame, no one is really blaming them. It is the people with the blowhorns and Fox News and the right wing, media pushing these garbage theories and provoking these young men into doing terrible, terrible thing against their neighbors. But we don't seem to really focus on the people with the megahorns pushing this garbage out there, trying to start a race war. So that's kind of what I'm seeing, the connections, and I hope I'm not the only one seeing that. With all these young men of a certain age, of a certain persuasion, of a certain ideology, willing to take matters into their own hands, and sort of kill people who does not agree with them. Forget not looking like them, because that young man who did what he did when he went to that protest, the people he killed looked just like them, but those people didn't think like him. So these young men willing to kill people who doesn't look like them or think like them in a hope to start a ideology war or race war. So I just wanted to hear anybody else's opinion on that. Am I crazy? Am I wrong?
I know. I think that's worth exploring more.
Yeah,
Am I saying wrong?
No, you're not at all. Now they've been given a lot of press to Tucker, and he's trying to pretend like he's never said the you know, the whole replacement theory,
Replacement
or I
theory.
don't understand the replacement theory, and he's trying to backtrack all of the stuff that he said, which, you know, he does
Yeah,
every other time. They
I
try
saw
to blame
his
him and say
response
he's being
video.
blamed for no reason.
Yeah.
And as far as the race war goes, every single one of every white supremacist action and every white supremacist like terrorist action like this is always to start a race war. I mean, that's even what happened with Manson. Like, the whole point is to start a race war. The whole idea is, and it's the part that always drives me nuts is people think that it's to motivate white people, but in general, they're almost always, it's supposed to motivate blacks and Jews to fight white people, and then the thing to start. They don't think that their action is going to start the fight. They think, oh, well, since we already tell everybody that black people are the violent people, if we attack them, they'll obviously become violent, and then everyone else have to fight back.
Yeah. Let provoke them into starting a race war so we can justify killing them. Yeah, that's the theory out there. Like, it is to provoke the, you know, the black community into retaliating and violence so they could, you know, justify, you know, a genocide. And but the fact that everyone who seemed to have the mean to push hard, I mean, the people in political positions with the bigger microphones don't seem to want to push hard on these ideas.
In order
They
for them to
kept
push hard, they
pushing.
would have to not believe in those ideas. And the reason why they are quiet is because they are perfectly okay with those ideas. It's not necessarily the idea that they are proponents of it. And when I say that, I'm talking more along the lines of like McConnell, who said nothing.
Yes,
They're not necessarily
yes, that's
they're not necessarily a proponent of it, but they are perfectly okay with it. And therefore, why would they talk against it? And there's no benefit for those on that side to come against it. All they're going to do is get more anger from their people for saying something against it. When, to be honest, I don't think they really care either way. Like, I'm not even thinking that it's necessarily that they're on a racist perspective when it comes to McConnell. McConnell just doesn't care. As long as he keeps getting money in his bank, he doesn't care what happens to the rest of the planet.
Right.
That's the
Well,
way
I
you
have
don't
a
have to
question.
go to go ahead.
Y'all are going way too fast for me. You got the engineer brain and I believe what, the lawyer brain. Do I have that right, sir? Haji?
No, but yeah.
Basically.
I'm the military officer brain, so that's where my pops
I'm
goes.
sorry. No, so
If
when you say
after you do finish the introduction, I do, you know, I'm gonna kind of run this a little bit as he let me do it. So I do have a bunch of topics to kind of roll through.
okay.
So, and I do want to get to Kyle, but then but
sorry.
No, you go ahead first. You go ahead first, and I want to get over to Kyle just because.
Just when we do open the conversation, my question is, could you, Mr. Simon, excuse me, Mr. Simon Jr., describe the they you're talking about?
Oh yeah,
the base. Is that
you
what
want
you're
me?
saying?
I can give you a list.
You know,
No,
they
the
are
day,
okay
the day
with.
that I'm talking about.
Who's the they?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know who's familiar with the Boogaloo movement, the 3%ers, the KKK. There's a whole history of these supremacist movement trying to start a race war. It is not a new thing. I'm always amazed at where people think this replacement theory is a new thing from this French philosopher. It's been around since 1619, where it is not a new idea, that they always afraid that they will eventually be replaced as they replace the Indians, and that replacement will be as savagery as it was against the Indian. So it is that same fear that existed in South Africa, thinking if apartheid and the black majority was gonna sacrifice the white, and that none of that come to pass, because people always think that you will treat them as they treated you, and that is the biggest human fallacy. No one want violent, right?
Daniel, if I may, to kind of put a fight, there is amongst white people, and I can speak as a representative today. there is an enormous fear, there really is that when we lose power due to changes in demographics and things like that, that we are terrified that other groups will be as terrible to us as we were to all the people that we ran over getting here. When it talks about replacement theory, we started that right by replacing the native population with ourselves, by wiping them out and pushing them onto reservations and so on and so forth.
Right.
I have heard in quiet moments where they've looked over the shoulder. I've had conversations with people, and I won't name any names, of like just the fear that it would be so bad to be in that situation and not be in a majority anymore. And I've heard this from highly intelligent, articulated, educated individuals who have basically everything in the world, and they're still terrified that if we're not going to be in charge anymore, it's gonna happen to us. And there is this ingrained fear, and it's not rational, because there's no real logical mechanism by which that could or should happen, but it's still there, and it is very much ingrained. The idea that and I was even recently accused of, would really love to see a straight white Christian male get persecuted, like because I'm a horrible liberal atheist or whatever. Like the idea of seeing someone like that persecuted, that I would just love. It's like, no, like we just me not in. I'm not about to make this shit about myself, but like wanting to not see people get stepped on is not the same thing as wanting to step on you. Like, but it's got to be either or. It's got to be zero sum. That someone's got to lose. And if a lot of white people think if we're not winning, that means we're losing, and that's where a lot of this comes from.
And
but
the
I want
funny
to go
part about that
go
is
ahead,
those
Haji,
same
then I do
people
want to
will
get to
say
Kyle.
that there's no systemic racism. There's no
Right.
systemic racism. But if you go in charge, you're going to do what we're doing, which also sounds a lot like systemic racism.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like you're cheating on your significant other and then coming home and blaming or accusing her of cheating.
Right.
It just sounds like a guilty conscience.
Yeah, it's projection.
Oh, completely.
Yeah. You're
right, Kyle.
I'm afraid you're going to do to me what I've been doing to you. That's
All right, Kyle, go ahead and say something.
yeah. Kyle, all right, Kyle. Yeah. Let's get Kyle get a word in edgewise here.
Y'all gotta forgive me if I totally forgot the question, if there was one.
I just
This is just the
really
tell
did-
about
just
yourself part
kind
was
of-
all this was really supposed to be. We just
Yeah.
kind of went off on a
Okay.
bunch of topics after.
Yeah, we really did.
But it was good. Y'all
What
had
are
me
you-
in it. I didn't want you to pass me the mic. I don't really have anything of value to add here, but I'm Kyle Robinson of the Adolescent Redemption Project, and I'm just checking out the conversation. I'm listening in and trying to figure out what caused this 18-year-old young man to do what he did. Now, we can definitely imagine some of the factors pretty easily. I'm curious about what was up under there that should have been seen not just 6 months ago, not just a year ago, but maybe earlier than that, because the nature of my activism is that I interact with prisoners every day who went to prison at that age or earlier and have actually changed and are redeemed, and I'm trying to make sure that their voices get heard. But it's always a theme that I gravitate to is what was going on, what did they see, what did they suffer, what did others ignore, and just try to piece it together like that. I don't know too much about the case, so I'm hoping Haji is gonna load us up.
Gotcha. No, and that's a good point.
All right, so on
go
his
ahead,
part
Haji.
of the discussion, so for him and where he came from, it's a typical semi-rural area that has had their livelihood sent away and or closed down, so therefore the whole area is a little bit poorer than it used to be or should be. And instead of blaming the corporations that have left them or anything along those lines, it's a lot easier to blame the boogeyman that gets put into it. And the older he got, the more he was looking to figure out why his area of the world was not doing as well as he thought it should be doing. Yes, COVID did affect him, and they talk about it, but not in the way of like he got COVID and COVID was the issue. It was that he got more isolated like everybody else did. So then he went down the rabbit hole on the internet. And as he looked in the internet, this thing agrees with me. So I read the other people that agree with the person that I agreed with. Well, now I kind of agree with them. So now I agree with the other people that kind of agreed with it. And you slowly get more radicalized, which happens in any philosophy. If you are only looking at the stuff that makes you feel good, then you are going to get more and more into a bad side of whatever your perspective is. It's even this case what happens with radicalized Hindu and Buddhist people. If you stay completely only in your perspective and you only do with what's comfortable, then you will slowly become radicalized against everything that doesn't make you feel comfortable. And that was the trend that it looks like as his manifesto kind of spoiled off to. The manifesto has been published. Probably quarters of it is just plagiarized from the other people who have done the same kind of stuff. It's almost verbatim the stuff that was said by the guy in New Zealand, as opposed to the kid down south. It's really just a cut and paste of a lot of their stuff, which I don't doubt that possibly in his mind he thought he was coming up with an original thought, but he had just heard those thoughts so much through so many different ways that it ends up being pretty much exactly what the other people had said. Like it's kind of like the way when you were in middle school where you were like, I'm not plagiarizing because I changed the this to an R, but it's the rest of it's exactly the same stuff. And that's pretty much the way his writing is. It's like, I didn't do it because I said up north and they said down south and he said over in New Zealand and I said in New York.
Right,
and
yeah.
So, but it's essentially the same stuff.
It's the same content. It's the same replacement theory crap, essentially.
Same replacement theory crap. Same. Why are they not allowing us to grow kind of thing? The perspective a lot of people lose out on is the kind of the twisted Western civilization thing, which is society is only good because Western civilization made it good and Western civilization came out of Europe. So therefore we are the creators of what is the best parts of society because of that kind of thing.
Which is
ignoring
hilarious.
The amount of influence from the Far East and Africa that led into the Western civilization idea when it became Western civilization. You can't just put the hide camera in. You don't have to.
I'm gonna mute him. Were you trying to hide? Yeah, I mean, you can go to the back rooms, man. If you're trying to take a back, I was like, what is going on over here?
I was like, there's a stop cam button.
I was like, man, we got the technology. If you're trying to,
well, put me up on the technology because I swear I was sitting here looking for the stop cam button for like 30 seconds. Where is it at?
It's at the bottom. It's at the bottom.
Here, I can just take you down to the back room, man. Like,
you can also do Control E.
Yeah, just send me a message or whatever in the comments if you're trying to jump back on. All right, but that's hilarious.
I'm not here. It's kind of like when my dog hides behind the couch, but his butt's still showing. So
that's too funny.
So the other part when we're going on of him spiraling and going through those things. But while he did not explicitly say that he watched Tucker Carlson, and that is Tucker Carlson's way of saying it wasn't me. He said he was on 4chan and the other ones, and it wasn't me. It just happens to be the people that get their talking points on 4chan listen to me, but that was not from me. And he says essentially the same thing. I have this discussion with many of my white friends' parents who are like, I'm not racist, but you post a lot of Tucker Carlson stuff. They're like, yeah, but I'm not racist. I'm like, but all of the Tucker Carlson stuff that you post is racist.
Right. You're racist.
Like, no, it's not. I'm like,
yeah,
if everything you post is immigrants couldn't be here because they're dirty, that's racist. like, do you not understand that? No, and they'll be the same people like, no, that he just has some odd views, but that's not being racist, which is the same perspective of he's not racist, he has mental issues. Like, no, he is racist. He mentally
most can be true.
Functional.
Yeah.
He made all of the educational decisions to make himself racist. All of the people who are racist don't have mental issues. They may not have been exposed to other people in certain things, but they're not racist because they have some kind of mental defect. They decided to be that way, or were instructed to be that way.
Yeah, whatever the other motivations are, like, that doesn't absolve you of being a racist if you're a racist. Like, it's still, like, if you still jumped into that ideology, and it's the whole thing about Tucker is because, and if I'm not imagining many people that watch this show watch a lot of Tucker Carlson, unless you're like me and you just want to absorb, the evil so you understand, what the other side's saying, which there are more reasonable voices on the right. I do have a hard time finding them a lot of the times, but then there's also the more unreasonable ones, and those are the ones that you're interacting with their regurgitation on a daily basis. So I try to get it from the source when I can, when I can tolerate it. But yeah, he's been going on about it. It's like a sanitized version, basically, of what this shooter got from 4chan and wherever the hell else he was, getting radicalized. This is like, he doesn't say it quite this, like Tucker won't say it quite the same way, but he's talking about the same concepts and the same motivations. It's just a little bit cleaned up for Fox News, and it's not, it's not going to have the overt slurs that you might find on 4chan.
I don't know how clean up is cleaned up when he kept saying they're coming for you, they're coming for your right, they're coming for your gun. It sounded like the very same crap, they were saying in Uganda when they were having their, their little, exercise of killing their neighbors. That was the same thing that was being said in Germany, where they're having their little exercise of killing their neighbors, who happen to be Jews. It's always whenever you start phrasing stuff that they're coming for you.
Well, those weren't legacy German citizens, right? They weren't legacy German citizens. That's he didn't say Jew. He said,
right.
I mean, that's the fucking game they're playing.
Yeah, that language is racist. Whatever you wanna try to, call it, people think racism just means being anti-black, or it's kind of a clear, denomination between what's racist and not racist. It is very gray. Those same language were used, in Germany. It was used in Uganda when they were killing, each other because they happen to look a little bit different. It is that same language. I'm telling you, it's not just him, but Jordan Peterson with this whole, hard on he has for, Western ideology as being, the cradle of civilization. It's another form of racism, but it's under the guise of, a culturalism. I don't know what I'm
philosophically dress it up. Yeah, I think Jordan Peterson is also like an idiot's vision of a smart person, which we have those tag groups there for a reason.
Hey.
It's this kind of.
He's a crying version of Ben Shapiro.
He basically, yes.
It's the same ism. It's the same ism of a different intellectual manure to make it sound, smell better, right? It's the same garbage, but people don't think they are being, they are slinging shit on, excuse my French, because it's not them directly doing it. But if you agree with these ideas and you passing it around, in a way, you have distinction. You are racist by association. You start smelling like shit too.
Could you name something? Go ahead, Jay. Could you name something specifically that Jordan Peterson has said that is, just to give us all an example, because I'm very curious about that guy.
Go read his book. I've been reading Jordan Peterson's book because
Which one? Maps of Memory or 12 Rules or 12
I have all of them. I have all of them.
all of JP's books.
I love Jordan. I love him. I love him until he started being racist. Then I don't like that part of him, and then I go back to loving him. The stuff he's not being racist about.
Could you give me an example of one of the things that he showcased being racist?
I just said his idea, this fascination he has with Western ethos as being the cradle of intellectual prowess, whatever.
But you're an engineer, sir. You're an engineer. Right. What is he basing that on?
Yeah.
We need context.
He's basing that
saying it's the cradle
on a false history. He's basing that on a false history because
he's basing that
on the fact. Right. He's
that
basing
Western
on the
civilization
fact, right?
is the one that has taken over everybody else's property. Essentially, like he even lists, I believe, like for example, uses Tokyo and Seoul. Like if you look at Tokyo and Seoul, those cities are Western cities. They just speak a different language. And that's his way of saying, see, Western civilization is the more dominant and more successful one, because even in the other societies, Western civilization is what thrives now.
Okay, but is he saying that because Europeans are superior, that's why that is? Or is he just saying by the numbers, they own most of the things? People speak English
No,
everywhere.
it's
He
that
said,
they came up with a superior civilization, and that's why the civilization
right.
is more
But
dominant
why
than
is he
the
saying
others.
it's superior? I'm sorry, I got all kinds of
No, it's
questions.
cool.
No, no, no,
Why
no,
is he
you're
saying
fine.
it's superior?
Yeah.
Because
Well,
he believe it. Because he believe it
it
is
does not
superior.
think it's a racist
Hold on, one at a
statement, but it's
time.
basically
Yeah.
saying that Europeans, which would be white people, came
Uh-huh.
up. Their society is a better society than everyone else's society, which is not
Because they
blatantly
just happen
saying
to
white
be
people are better, but what they're saying
Yeah.
is everything white people came up with is better than what everybody else came up with. But I'm not saying white
right.
people are
But
better.
every time
There's
I hear him
yeah.
talk about the numbers as far as like poverty, because since we've implemented certain systems, and I don't
No,
think it
no,
really
no.
matters because all of those systems are extracted from ancient Egypt, where men and women work together and women own businesses. Like they took little bits and pieces from everywhere and just made a compilation, right? And
Oh,
it drove
and
down
he
poverty.
ignores the fact that the entire Renaissance movement was literally people going back to the Middle East and going, "Hey, all those books that we
Yes.
They got
burned,
better
the scrolls
stuff.
that we
Yeah.
burned, could we make some new copies and learn that again? My bad." Like,
Right,
like
right. So you're talking about
so
like the Moor civilization and
yep.
all of that, and
And the
Eastern
only way that they could
civilizations.
have that they were essentially re-educated by what was the Islamic like kind of world at the time,
Right.
because they had continued, which is why as a Muslim I get annoyed with the whole anti-education part of the Islamic
Yeah.
world, because I'm like, literally that was what we did that they didn't do, and now we're
Right.
going dark
Right.
ages instead. So
Right.
Right.
the
Yeah, they're gonna ban Arabic
but
numerals next.
yeah,
Right.
like
I know Simon would love this. The fact that they used that triangular whatever to build basically everything.
Hmm.
yep.
Everything was perfectly matched. But I want to get back to Mr. Cal's question. Why did he feel the need for this to happen? He comes from a two-parent home. They're both engineers, right? Both of his
Okay.
parents are engineers, and he went to a school trying to become an engineer himself. Is this another Hitler was cast out of art school theory?
I think so. There's a couple of things that happen here because you always have, whenever it's somebody like this, it's somebody who's not mentally healthy to begin with, right? And so it becomes very easy to be dismissive. Oh, it's a mental health issue. It's not, there's nothing bigger going on here than that. Well, he does have a mental health issue, and clearly people who are mentally healthy don't go around shooting up supermarkets, right? It doesn't happen. But there are other things going on here as well. But yeah, kind of social isolation, poor social integration, him having mental health issues, it makes him a prime candidate for becoming radicalized. We've seen this before in years past on this show. We've had incels on before, the involuntarily celibate. There is a pipeline of radicalization for those people because they come out sort of loud and proud and angry about the fact that they can't get laid, if I'm just putting it on the table that way.
Mhm.
And then people give them shit for it, right? They make fun of them. It's a very easy group to target, to mock. And the things that they're mad about is feminism, about the lack of traditional family structure anymore, and the changing of society. This makes them prime targets to go over to the alt-right because those people who are trying to recruit, they go, oh, the rest of the world's making fun of you. These liberals are making fun of you. The women are making fun of you. Come over here with us. We understand what you're saying. We agree with you. And that's how they end up over there. And, and we all, through mocking them, we help drive them in that direction. So when someone starts having these bad ideas, I think it was Haji was saying earlier, when you start going down this rabbit hole and only consuming that kind of content, as soon as someone interacts with you who disagrees with you, you're going to double down more because you're having an emotional need for a sense of community and a sense of your own identity by being with those radicals. And you're trying to take that away from them where they can have nothing again. And they're just gonna double down.
But David, I feel like that's the low hanging fruit. And I feel like that's the low hanging fruit. And Cal's question is probably the most interesting because Tucker Carlson racist, big surprise, right?
We know why. I mean, it's not a difficult answer. We know. I mean, oh my God, okay. Imagine this was a black kid. What would we have said? We would say, well, this kid had a bad parent. He was in a bad community. He was blah blah blah.
Something father was home. Yeah.
Right. This kid just had bad parenting. Forget the fact they're engineers.
How do you know
they were
that?
not doing their job as parent? Because use the same logic you will use for a black kid. Use the same logic you use for a black kid or a Muslim kid.
Now
Use
listen,
that same
I've got
logic.
4, sir, and one is a
No, use that
17-year-old
same
girl.
logic.
No. Here's what I'm
I'm
saying.
telling you,
Here's what I'm
use that
saying. As
same
a father,
logic because
hang on. As a father of 4, I'm telling you, I have a 17-year-old daughter, and we bring her up a certain way. But if she is isolating herself and feeling isolated, and then a group all of a sudden shows up with wide open arms, she's going. The human brain doesn't even finish developing until 24 or thereabouts. She's
no, what I'm
17.
pushing back, why you feel the need to push to say this kid had an engineering parent? That's only mean it, they're better parent.
Because of what you just said.
in
Put
that
this in the
black
put this in the
mother,
black put
same,
this in a black parent home. Let me ask you a
right,
question. You're saying
right.
put this through the eyes of black kids. And I'm saying if I had a black daughter and myself and my wife is an engineer, it would baffle everybody if she just
No,
went
it
and
will
shot
not
up a white
baffle.
store.
It will not baffle a white person to simply say because this kid did what they did because they have, terrible black parents. Forget the
Okay.
career for a minute. Don't
Okay,
use that
so
as a
hold
mean.
on.
I mean, there's
these
multiple things going
downside
on
of
here. Go ahead,
these
Haji.
certain
hold
group of
on,
people
Daniel. The
because they
downside
have.
of what you
I'm an
Look what you
engineer, right?
started.
I'm an engineer.
hey, I agree,
You're
Daniel,
good, Jay.
that's what they would say. And I would agree that in
Yeah.
both cases they would be wrong.
Right, but
That's
my
what
whole
the
point is
narrative would say. Hold on,
right,
that's what
but
the narrative would say, and that's what
right,
the narrative is trying to put in this scenario. There is
right.
he had a better chance of not ending up this way because of the family that he was in. But
Yeah.
that doesn't stop any of the other stuff from making it so he turns out that way.
Right. That's my point
The
exactly.
biggest issue with it, and the reason why it happens a lot more now, or it is visibly becoming more popular now, is the same reason why people didn't understand why so many people got radicalized in Islam. If you are
Okay,
in a
okay,
group,
perfectly
if you
put,
are in a
perfectly
group
put.
where that is ostracized by other people, and you can go onto the internet and find a group that is just like you that never ostracizes you, you will slowly, even the things that you disagree with them on, you will slowly agree with them on because of the fact that they are not ostracizing you. So therefore, you're going to support them more. It's the same way that people end up in gangs. It's the same way that people end up in
No,
cults. It's the same way. It's the same way that people who join the military are completely different people than when they come out of the military. They
But the
the
point I'm
once
trying to
you
get
are
at, I think you guys are missing it. You're missing the point. The fact of these are middle class kids, right? That should be doing better. Where the poor kids are not being radicalized to become these weapon of mass destruction. That's what I'm saying. It's not the fact we assume the worst out of these poor kids when they're not really the one that are the problem. It's these middle class kids, like you say, who had better expectation, right? They're the one getting radicalized, picking up the guns to wanna start whatever waste war. This is what I want people to avoid. Avoid that mental fallacy of expecting the worst out of poor people and assume these good things out of middle class kid who should have better opportunity. Realizing this danger does not the reason this movement, this replacement, and these people that's agonizing, the reason this thing is so sticky, it give them a reason, it give them a sense of purpose, right? We have to have these kids redirect that energy toward the military. This is why I'm all for military service, right? Go,
now,
the moment
Okay.
you high school, go in the
Yeah,
military,
hold up,
time,
hold
right?
up.
we got
There have
time.
been
Hang
a
on.
lot. There have been a lot of people who were radicalized in this direction while in the military.
Yeah.
That is a
That
much
doesn't
bigger
help.
problem than people think. It is a much bigger
True,
problem than people think.
true.
Daniel, hang on a second.
But
Let me.
And they just become better at it.
I got to be the host for a second. Yeah, that's what I was about to say, Haji, is that it can be good. It can also be a tool for radicalization, depending on who you're associating with in the military. The thing about this guy, Paytons and the Dillons and all the Christchurch shooters and all, they're the one that's going to go out. And this is how stochastic terrorism works. That somebody puts out these awful ideas. It's either it's on 4chan or it's Tucker Carlson or Ben Shapiro or whoever the hell. They put out these radicalizing ideas. And they have this plausible deniability about it because, well, I just said these things. I didn't tell anyone to go hurt anyone or commit a crime or anything else like that. But someone's going to go and do it. And the fact that it will reliably happen, even though we don't know who's necessarily going to do it or where, that's why it's called stochastic terrorism. I wanted to get that part of it out so that people didn't think that, like, we're just assuming everyone who listens to Tucker is going to start doing this kind of stuff. That said, Jay Zilla has asked for Kyle to come on deck and talk a little bit more about some of his experiences.
Because I'm telling you,
I don't know if you can see it in the
question-
private chat or not, Kyle, but you've been pinged a couple of times here. They're looking for you, sir.
I don't have any experience that I relate to with this person. Can you form the question a little bit different?
Okay, here will be my question. If y'all don't mind.
All right, hold up.
Okay.
I'm gonna move to the next topic, and Kyle, you be the first one that talks. How about that way?
Okay. How about this? Since okay, cool. Go ahead.
All right, so the main thing that drives people in, or appears to drive people into scenarios like this and leads in societies into this, is almost always an economic issue. The reason why Nazis became Nazis was because of the economic issues that were in Germany. The reason why that stuff happened in Rwanda is because of the economic issues that were happening in Rwanda. The more that you get the bottom to feel worse and economically fall apart, the more that there's a chance that they will rally together in a hateful way to fight against the fact that they are no longer getting what they should have gotten in the first place. So in my opinion, and that's why if you think about northern cities, why everyone laughs and they even keep saying, like, even in Buffalo, I'm like, northern cities are more segregated than southern cities. Simple fact. In every northern city, you can walk in every city and be like, that's the black side of town. That's where the Hispanics are. That's where the Asians go. That's where the Polish immigrants came. That's where in every black city, because they were in every northern city, because they were formed as ghettos. So if you have a segregated city, while there are random people that break into the other side and aren't forced to be there, you clump with the people that you are like, and therefore you kind of tend to gravitate with the idea that you're more comfortable with the people that are like you.
For sure. That's
even why he ended up here in Jefferson.
Small anecdote. I mean, and about northern cities. My grandfather used to tell me stories about when he would grow up, and it's not even black or white. He was Irish German. He couldn't go through an Italian neighborhood without getting his ass kicked until he made buddies with a couple of the Italian guys, and then he was okay to go through to walk those streets basically without getting harassed. Like that's just how it was, and that was back in like the 20s and 30s. It's not the mentality hasn't changed. It's just all white versus everything else now, right?
Well, I still love that when they're like, "Oh no, it's not that segregated." I'm like, so Little Italy, Little China, Vietnam Town, like all these cities that have that, it's called that for a reason, because that's where they are. That's a segregated thing. They're just not forced to be there anymore, but they're still in that area.
Yeah. Yeah, there's places in St. Louis. They actually, again, nothing against Italians, but since I'm on the topic, I was in St. Louis a few years ago. I'll get right to you. But seriously, there's realtors that won't talk to you unless you're Italian. But go ahead, Kyle. I'm sorry.
It's all good. It's all good.
I jumped
in. I really didn't have nothing to say. I was
polite.
kind of riding the wave. Y'all, no, y'all just lucky y'all my friends. I'd be flaming y'all ass. But it's all good. We've covered a lot of good content, and a lot of it's worth maybe examining further. And I'm still kind of getting caught up to speed on some of the details. So being there, I was looking for your name like I don't know your name. Haji, being there in person and being, related to someone who died, what comes up for you? It's like David said, almost reliably predictable. It is reliably predictable. It feels comical, but this is also something that's worth grieving about. And I want to say I'm sorry for your loss, and I appreciate you carrying it and still doing your work to expose the facts. Thanks. Done speaking, by the way. For right now. I'm just gonna do that so y'all
HRK
know.
has left the building.
So polite.
Best question.
Kyle
How
used to
does
go.
this happen?
He used to go by HRK because he every time he would come to us on a live stream, he was on. He was in a hotel room somewhere in New York. Usually, and it was like all throughout the pandemic, even before. So it was Hotel Room Kyle was his nickname for us. So we go.
I forgot that. I swear I forgot
remember.
that.
Was that him in the hotel when I came on before?
Probably.
Probably.
Right.
Walking around
Yep.
looking cool.
I think he's only been home like twice.
Oh my goodness. But I do believe you have the most important question here, which is how. And my only reason for bringing in what his parents did was exactly as Mr. Haji said, which is most of the time, poverty is a driver. most of
This
the
kid
time
wasn't
money.
poor.
He wasn't poor, so that set him apart from the other ones. Everyone else has some sort of legitimacy as far as, hey man, my daddy lost his job in the coal mines, and Trump said it's because
There's no
of the
legitimate
racism.
reason to be a mass murderer.
It's a legitimate
So-
I'm
reason to be
curious.
upset. It's more along
No,
the
no,
lines
no.
of it being a legitimate reason to be upset.
Not a
So,
mass murderer, but yes, to be upset. But I'm saying
so,
like this
so the
kid got
biggest.
set apart.
So here's a very simple thing. In Rwanda and in South Africa and in Germany, post their ridiculousness, they all now have mandatory training about how things went bad. In all of their educational programs, there is mandatory part of their history that talks about what led them down the bad side, why they became the bad side, why they should never be the bad side again. The reason why it's going to continue to happen here is because no one wants to examine or acknowledge what was wrong and what we did that was wrong.
What were they
So
saying though?
while there
What were they
will
saying was
always
the
be
bad
people
side?
who feel that way and who will always be people, there will always be people who are racist. There will always be people who hate. It's just a matter of like, you're never going to get away with the anger. The difference is you can recruit a lot more people in when the other people that you're recruiting have never been exposed to why your belief is not appropriate.
I
And
want to say
our
something.
country does not want to do that. Regardless of the fake CRT argument, which everyone complains about the whole CRT thing and blah 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 blah, which there hasn't been any CRT in anything, any elementary schools or middle schools or high schools, it hasn't happened. That being said, a certain form of it should have been happening the whole time. For example, George Washington, great man, helped start the country. That's awesome. On his deathbed, said that he would turn the slaves in and they could be free when he dies. So at least while he was alive, he still wanted to make sure he ain't.
No, after his wife died.
Yeah,
that
after
was
his wife
because I've been to
died.
Mount Vernon. It basically said,
That's
yeah,
right.
they can
After
go.
his
They
wife
can go
died, which
free.
the family reneged on anyway, so that doesn't matter.
Oh, that doesn't surprise me. They leave that part out when
Yeah.
you take the tour, by the way.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, of course I did.
So that
I went.
they all go like, he said the slaves should be free when his wife dies, and they don't go, but we didn't.
Yeah, I missed that
Oops,
part. Yeah,
I forgot.
They
That's
didn't
my
bring that
kid's
up on the
excuse all
tour.
the time. I forgot.
I mean, even at the Alamo, me and my wife, we just went to the Alamo the other day, and they have a big old plaque talking about how the Texans revolted against the Mexican army. It was because they passed these awful laws. The laws being that the Mexicans outlaw slavery, right? But no one
Yep.
detailed what was the law that got passed that turned the Texans against Mexico, right? They outlaw. I mean, it all this like Haji said. There's all this little, incomplete. I don't want to say false history, incomplete history we are taught in school that keep giving, fuel to this energy. But I want to go back to what someone said about incel. Like these young men or have all this pent up energy because they don't get to play violin with women parts just because they happen to be a certain persuasion, right? They have to compete, right? They have to raise their game. If you can't compete, brother, you don't get to play, right?
Yeah.
And that frustrates them, and I think that's the fear. They realize they will have to compete, and that terrified them because when I could not get women and I could not compete,
feeling like you can't compete.
right?
Yeah,
Because
and it's
I used to stutter because I didn't have the intellect, because I didn't have the game. What did I do? I started focusing on myself. I started trying to become a better dude, a better guy, and then suddenly, I was not so repulsive to women. It's not about hating the people who are doing
well, it's
better.
about personality. I mean, the whole
Right.
incel mentality, and I've had many conversations with incels at this point, that they project their own superficiality onto women, just generally speaking. If you just want to understand the incels, it's like, oh, I can't get a girl because I live in a affluent area and I don't make any money. I'm not tall enough. That's a real common one. I'm not tall enough. I'm not attractive enough. I'm not whatever. I don't have the right genes, the right pedigree to get a woman, because they're thinking women look at him the way he looks at women, and they, they'll rate women. They'll give them a number. This one's a 9 out of 10. This one's a 3. I wouldn't settle for a 3. I would only take a 6. That kind of thing is, I mean, it's toxic and fucked up and stupid in all its own right. But the point is, for whatever reason, whether or not it's someone is, economically depressed or just have other reasons for, so like this person, he came from a, affluent family, we'll say, or well off enough, there's no real economic hardship in his life. He's still isolated. That still makes him a target for radicalization. Even though economics is oftentimes a driver, it's not always a driver. And
I want to put back
here's
the idea
the-
there are many young men who are isolated who don't become these mass murderers. I don't want to keep generalizing.
All
it
takes is them hearing one comment that leads them in that direction, and then another comment, and then another comment. The reason why so many people don't end up that way is for a couple reasons. It's that Swiss cheese model. Everything's got to line up perfectly for the hole to go all the way through. That's part of it. They have to get, everything has to line up. So all this has to be right. In his case, economics actually did play into it, but in a different way. His family was rather well off in an area that was not well off. So he became isolated because he is essentially the upper middle class kid in the lower middle class area.
Well, their value was obviously
so
in
it's
things,
not,
right?
It's not that. It still ends up being that it was an economic thing that isolated him from the opportunity of doing certain things. He didn't hang out with as many people because he was the quote unquote rich kid, even though he was really just kind of upper middle class. So it still kind of played in its own way.
Parents.
No, it's not
the same way.
Here's the thing: if you have a kid that's 10 and he goes and does a bunch of crap, go ahead and blame the parents. You got an 18-year-old? Sorry. The parents could have done it. Everything they wanted to do still happens.
This is still on him.
He's still living at home, but he's not. You were a teenager. When you were a teenager, did you hang out with your parents? When you were a teenager, did you hang out with your parents? Did you hang out with your parents?
Responsibility.
Hold on.
I did. I was a weird teenager. I have to give you that. I was a weird teenager. Okay, my mom was me and my mom, in America, right? And I was a weird teenager. What I'm trying to say is we need to get in the habit of sharing responsibility with these kids, because these kids don't become these targets on their own. They just share responsibility. It has to be communal. It has to be, family. It has to be social.
They do share responsibility, but not in the way that I don't agree with you in the way you think. So I believe they shared blame as in the fact that they didn't expose this kid to enough stuff that would have proven to him that the things he was thinking were wrong. That's the part that I give them the blame for. They didn't expose him because in their mind, they didn't have those beliefs. So they just assumed that he'll never have those beliefs. So therefore, you don't expose him to things that would make the things that they were exposed to, like going to college, that made them think that it wasn't that big of a deal. If you don't expose them to that, then they don't have the same experiences. That's the way it has to be done. But most people just assume that everybody in their house thinks the way they think. That's every house. Right. You just assume that everybody has, because you share it 80%. 80% of you guys, in every house, probably 80% of every value you have, everybody in the house has. That 10 to 20% is where everybody changes a little bit. The same reason why, if a kid's an athlete and the other kid's a nerd, those two kids will have morally the exact same thing, but those 20% difference of him wanting to study more and the other kid wanting to play sports is going to lead them in two different paths.
I agree. But the blame that we're trying to put on Tucker and his other external influence on these kids, where the people who are closer to him would have a greater impact in changing his trajectory than those other people. If we're willing to blame the Tucker of the world, the right-wing media,
don't blame Tucker.
It's not an either.
I'm not blaming Tucker. That's like saying I don't blame the book Mein Kampf for people becoming Nazis.
Right.
It's not. It's not him getting that simple information.
We're all kind of responsible for each other, right? In a way, we're all responsible for each other, right? And the people who are closest to you have the greater responsibility on you, as far as
a point.
I want to imagine the same language we'll be using if this kid was a Muslim kid or black kid, right? Or whatever other group that we want to segregate, right? To really go to the
once again,
right?
the idea of breaking him down. The idea of breaking him down to the false way that they explain Muslims and blacks is not the correct way. It should be going the other direction. We should be taking some of the responsibility that we put on the fatherless child on the father and go back to the child, not the other way around. His parents don't deserve more responsibility than what they've been given. The black parents deserve less responsibility for what they've been given.
Right. So
That's
it's
what
all
I'm
wrong.
trying to say. Like it's true. You are going to spend more time. But here's the thing. If both of your parents work and they work all day, when they come home and you come home and you're home for 2 hours before they get home because you came off of school and they got to come home from work and they're both tired. And when you're a kid, you beg your parents to play with you. When you get to be older, you're like, well, I don't really want to play with my parents. So that time now becomes them not imparting their opinions or their values on you because they're tired. They're just, and if they're not instructed and forced to spend the time with their kid because of the fact that they're trying to impart something, and if their kid is never exhibiting something that's ridiculously wrong when they're younger, the parents don't think to counter it. And then later when it comes up, you're now 6 years behind when they started down the rabbit hole. And your rope does not reach down to them to get them out of that hole. Regardless of how much you try, now you're the person that disagrees with them. So now they disagree with you simply because you disagree. So you can't pull them back. Like that's the part when I tell people who are white allies and they have kids and they're like, I really want to make sure my kid doesn't do things this way. And I'm like, all right, cool. Every year, every month, you do something that shows them that this is how you believe. Every year, every month, you show them that this is how you believe. Whether that means going to Juneteenth, because we have a Juneteenth festival here. Like in my house, we used to we went to the Polish festival, we went to the Italian festival, we went to Juneteenth, we went to our one little Asian festival. Going to those festivals is what told me that we're all the same people. If you don't specifically do stuff that shows them that you not only are they the same people, but shows them that you believe that they're the same people, they will not believe that later because they didn't have the instruction to let them know. And it's not a matter, and parenting is a perfect example of the fact that you could say whatever the hell you want. Kids learn from what you do. Like
So in a way, you say parents do have impact, right? Positive or negative, right?
They do.
So in a way,
but
parents did have
it's not
negative impact on the kids.
But they didn't impact him in a negative way. The problem is they didn't impact him in a positive way.
Enough. And maybe they did, but not
that's
enough.
enough. Yeah, and enough is the right way. And that's where yes, they had a failing, but they had a failing that every parent would have, because you just assume that if you and your kid are getting along, you guys probably think along the same lines. And if you are too busy to be able to do the things like I said, like going to the summer festivals that are the other things, and exposing them to stuff like that, or you don't have the money and you're in a town that's isolated and you don't have the money to go to a town where there are black people and do stuff with black people, then you're not exposing the kid to your actual philosophy and your actual thinking of the world.
Yeah,
so
but how many?
He doesn't have any choice.
Let me ask you a question,
to listen to the ones that do explain to him their philosophy.
Haji, let me ask you a question. How many of you on this panel have children? How many of y'all are parents?
I got a stepson, 15.
Stepson, so that's a parent. What about you, Cal, Haji, Daniel? None.
I have about 7
No,
kids.
but we've been multiple adoption fostering kind of thing.
Yeah, I have about 7
We've done
kids.
the foster
Kids
kind
that
Right. So for the parents on the panel, have you ever been just completely shocked by something wrong that your child did?
Yes.
I've got 4, and it's daily. Like, what are you thinking? Why would you even? I've never taught you this. What did this even come from? You know
It's
what I mean?
the wildest thing. And this wasn't my experience, but I've seen this. I was actually I was participating in kind of like a support group type thing, not so much for myself, but for other participants. And one of the women who came, she basically, that she was going through a lot in her life. And that her biggest problem was that her son had joined the alt-right, and he was one of these like tiki torch kids, basically. And like, I've come from, interacting with that kind of community through fuck all these people, like, hate their guts, hope they all end up dead or in jail or whatever. And then there's this lady talking about her son and how she's lost him and how she's broken hearted, and you're like, oh fuck, it's a real human being. Like,
yes,
but he's horrible, like he's the bad guy, like, and so you struggle with this, and you're like, but he's also just a dumbass kid, right? That if things were different in his life, and if he never went down this path, you wouldn't think this way about this person.
But as Socrates says in his trial, I don't know, maybe. You know what I mean? Like, maybe. We don't know. But what I think is most interesting is that there are the two extremes that people love to talk about because it's easy to talk about.
Yeah.
We love talking about Mother Teresa, who is this great saint of a woman. And we love to talk about Hitler, who was this monster of a person. Right? But most people live in the middle. How did this child, go from the middle and get recruited into the extreme to where he thought he was doing a service?
That's the thing. It's so easy to just want to be vindictive or look for easy answers. What were the parents doing? Is it father with something? Is it whatever? There's some easy thing, and it's it allows me to terminate my thinking about it, and I can wrap a bow on it, and I understand the world, and I feel confident and comfortable. That's the problem. They're the problem. Some other thing, some other person somewhere else did wrong, and this is why this is the way it is now, and they just need to fix it. Because the reality is it's way more complicated and it's way harder to try and figure out what's happening with these people that they end up this way. We can point to Tucker Carlson and other people like that. Yeah, they're not helping shit, but it's not the only thing, right? It's not the only thing.
It's harder. It's harder and more complicated. But think about it this way: everyone here in your life, think of the one teacher that made you think about enjoying school. Think of that one teacher. You could hate school. And we can name them, like 4th grade, Mrs. Heileman. If it wasn't for her, I probably would have been a C or below student for the rest of my life.
3rd grade, Mrs. Flowers.
And all that takes is that one person. And if you think about it, that one person had enough effect on you to change your entire life track. One person, because they believed in you. And since they believed in you, they guided you a certain way. Happens with people who can sing. Literally, that one person. That's all it takes is that one person. So if that one person, when you're low, is a villain, and that one person who's a villain heads you that direction, then regardless of what everyone else's effect had, that one person that has that one point at the right time is enough to slew you in that direction. And it's
so
horrible.
Often, though.
It's horrible, but there's plenty of one people out there. All it takes is that right moment, that right scenario. If you want a good example for the turning to the far right, watch the movie Higher Learning.
Yes,
Higher Learning is written perfectly because it comes down to
American History
like a 2-day period where everything changes in 2 days.
Right. Because what I feel like we don't do enough, we don't explain the blame of circle directly to the people that can impact this kid, because we are so individualized in America. We always want to blame the individual and not the
I agree.
It's ultimately up to the individual.
This kid, no, it's not a problem with the individual.
In my opinion, the problem is the system that makes us individualized, which is mainly our government and education, are the two reasons why this stuff happens. Those two systems, that encourage the way our society is, neither of them say, but treat people equally.
No, but we believe in
neither of them
as
truly
activists, right?
enforce that.
We believe that people can have impact, right? But I really believe these parents could have had impact in these kids if they were more proactive. The same way they could have been more positive.
They could have, but if in the wrong moment, if at the wrong moment he met the wrong person, that wouldn't have mattered how much the parents said. And
but
that's
again,
what I'm trying to
get.
as long as we keep blaming
and that's got to be continual action. And people are always on a continuum. You are always on a continuum. You're sliding back and forth at all times.
So they had a part to play, and it was like, maybe if you want to look at it in a negative light, some negligence there, because they just assume this kid has it great. He's not suffering or wants for anything, but they probably had a blind spot to the fact that mom's an engineer, dad's an engineer, so he felt he had to be one. He went to school. It says here that he's a former, student, right? A former engineering student, which means something happened there to where he did not make it. And no telling what that does to a kid. And then along comes a spider that sits down beside you and Frappin tells you that, you know what? It's not your fault. It's these Mexicans and Jews over here. That's why you didn't make it, kid.
But
And he
again,
goes,
you're giving
yeah.
those other people
Yeah,
more
probably,
power
you
than
know,
the
affirmative
parents
action or
who
something.
can have. Again, the narrative you want to place in the same other people have this kind of negative impact. You don't want to put that same power into the parents. I want to believe that until we start sharing that blame across the community, you know, God
Daniel,
forbid,
you're right.
maybe we
How
should
about
start
this?
hold on.
You're
yelling
right.
these
Let's
parents.
share the
I
These
agree.
bad
responsibility.
It
kids
is the
doing
And he
this.
entire
still ultimately pulled the trigger.
community that is at fault for the scenarios when this happens.
sure.
And I'm going to comment for Teresa, who's on here,
Yep.
with the severe mental issues. So does that mean that everybody in the military has severe mental issues? Her post says, just joining anyone decided to kill a group of people has severe mental issues. A sane person would never think this way. He was insane and found a group of influence that fueled his insanity. So does that mean everybody in the military is insane?
I don't think she
When
means
I'm-
anything. I think
No,
I
I
think
know, but you
pretty much
gotta be
anyone who's a
very
military
specific.
veteran
think that's
probably has
another
mental health
excuse.
issues.
You wanna?
Hang
This
on.
kid
Cal put his
never
hand
been
up.
diagnosed
Cal
with
put his
mental
hand up.
illness.
Cal put his hand up.
HRK.
Cal is
I
in the
know,
building.
go Kyle.
Cal is in
Go
the
Kyle.
building.
All right.
Cal is in the building. Go.
Go Kyle.
Okay.
Okay, appreciate it. I just want to make sure that I'm tracking with the conversation right.
All good.
Some of the
Go
things
ahead.
that I've
Let me
heard
track along.
that stuck with me is Haji pointing out that the absence of an education or specifically educating your child around certain or exposing your child around certain experiences is a type of failure that people need to consider. And I think I heard from who's in the blue? I don't have the names up.
You talking about Anthony here, or you?
Anthony? Okay, cool.
So
So,
the parents, yeah.
and
Thank you for your comment, Anthony. By the way.
so Haji's discussing the societal responsibility, and I think Daniel is highlighting the need for the parents to, or not the parents, but the causes, the most direct causes, to face some type of accountability. If I understand that right, and I'm sure you'll go back and put some words in, or add the right words. And Jay Zilla, help me just kind of summarize your point real concisely so I can jump in with mine. So I'm reserving the mic right back. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, and I have a problem being concise, sir. Thank you for that. But what
You just did it. I'm just
Oh,
fucking with you.
I was like, well, hey, look at me. I'm magic. No, I understand it. I feel like I get everybody's point here, and I feel like we're saying some variation of the same thing. But I don't think we can make the same mistake that these incel groups or any other groups, positive or negative, by painting with a broad brush. Black kids are this, rich white kids are that. You can say most likely because that's just statistics, right? Most likely, I think is a more accurate way of putting that. But what I'm saying is this guy is outside of the norm. He's in a good place.
Okay. So I guess what I'm so,
No, Kyle.
please finish.
I
Okay,
want
so
to
I
hear
guess
that
what
from Mr. Simon, but go ahead.
I get. So I guess to move the conversation along, because there's a lot here that we're not going to figure out, and I might push us off of a cliff right here. Let me know if I do.
Go ahead.
No big
I'm here
deal.
with the mute button. Don't worry. I got
So this guy's 18. Looking at what he just did, for in the future, going forward with those same circumstances, where the shooter doesn't die and we put them in prison. I'm curious, and I don't have a point of reference for this. I do have a giant dog that just came into the room to join the podcast. I love cameos. What I want to know is, at what point would it be reasonable, if ever, to consider mercy or redemption? If he's 50 years old, for example, if he's 50 years old, or say 70 years old, is there a circumstance in which he's redeemable, or do we throw this child away for life?
All right,
For
so
me,
now
our
that's,
religion is
Or do we kill him?
hold on. That's perfect, because the next way I was going to go was on the criminal justice side of this. So Here's
I'm
the
listening.
simple fact of the matter is, if you don't think that we should kill every killer, then you better believe that they have the opportunity to be redeemed. Simple fact of
Okay.
the matter is, if
I
you do
agree.
not in your heart say, anybody who's killed anybody, we kill them right away. If that's not exactly what you think, then you need to understand that there has to be some way for them to be redeemed. There has to be. Um, and I'm like using music movies to help out. So American History X. All right.
Oh my
Yeah.
lord.
Yeah.
That dude was as evil could be. And if you don't think that he's redeemed at the end of the movie, then you don't understand the idea of redemption. So I completely agree. There is a way. I'm not saying that he necessarily would be, because I think it is harder to change your mentality than people think. So, but if he was able to change his mentality, put his life in a different direction, kind of see the light kind of perspective, which our prison system does not help with that transition at all, the then yes, he should be forgiven, accepted, and redeemed. I am a dog guy. I train dogs for a living. That's one of my main things. I train service dogs. I used to train working dogs. I have no problem with Michael Vick playing in football
I agree.
because he put every effort that he has done, every action that he has done since that problem happened has been in the correct direction and in the way of redeeming himself. You cannot, if you are going to hold something someone does forever against them, then you are, one, hurting yourself, and two, you are not allowing people to change and better themselves. And if the whole point is to get people better and have them be part of society, then you have to accept that there is certain ways that a person can redeem himself. I do not at this moment know exactly what his actions would be required to do to be redemptive,
I think that's a
for him
testament to
to
your
be to the
character.
point where I'd be like, yeah,
Yeah.
he's fully redeemed. But do I believe that there's an opportunity for him to redeem himself? Yes, and there should be. It's the same reason why I get annoyed when people get killed when they're being, and I'm a certified peace officer, so people getting killed in the process of taking them in for a crime. Well, what do I know? I don't know how they could have become, or how they could have changed, or how things would have happened, or how many people that they could have been their Mrs. Hyleman to somebody else and been that one person that says something that changes their life. You know, so personally, I am not now, nor I've ever been, a capital punishment person
And I 100%
for
agree
two
with you.
reasons. One, too many people get convicted when they're not really supposed to be there. So there's no guarantee that the people want to do it. The people who do confess that they have done it have the opportunity to change and could. Uh, and even with that happening, the ones that have done it, confessed, and then been killed, we really just did an assisted suicide because they said they wanted to die in the
Yeah.
first place.
Mm.
So it's
I
not.
I
appreciate
think
you fielding such a broad question. I want to make sure
Great
redemption.
that
question.
everyone gets
No,
this.
no, no. Be careful with the redemption. We cannot. Redemption cannot come before this young man. Show remorse, and there's
Retribution.
in the family. Yeah, if the family is made whole, then we can go and then give him the opportunity to show he's how he's changed, and he can receive redemption as a gift. That's way down the line. That's
Oh,
way
it's way
way
down.
down
I'm
the
not.
line.
I'm not saying it's anytime close. I'm saying
Right,
10, 15, 20 years into a sentence
right.
kind of thing.
And
But
that's fair. This young man has not demonstrated any remorse for his action. He
Right.
planned this.
We're not
He
there yet with
scouted out,
him. Like
and
we.
then
oh
he
yeah,
acted with
Agreed.
extreme prejudice, right?
Yeah.
Extreme prejudice. So yeah, redemption. I'm like Haji. I think everybody is redeemable, right? After they've demonstrate, you know, that that attribute, and deemed to receive the gift of redemption, right? It is a gift that society give to you, and it's not something you receive you know mm, just for pretending you've changed. You have to
Mm.
demonstrate that change, right? So that's way down the line. But until then, we are in the phase of assigning blame for this action, right? Then once we can, evenly assign blame, then we can really act on how to change this so it doesn't happen again in the future, right? And I hate the fact no one wanna, assign the blame broad enough. We wanna blame Tucker and the like, but we're not blaming the people directly close to this young man who could have had a more
Hold
direct.
on. That's
I don't think it's an
not what
either
I was
or
saying.
thing.
I'm
though.
saying they are part of the blame. They are part.
Right.
The way you are coming off as you're saying that it's the parents' fault majority wise. And I do not think it's the parents' majority fault as in why he is bad, other than the fact that they may have not
I said
shown
why.
enough
I
positive
thought that way,
thoughts
right?
as opposed to
Because
showing.
if the kids were black or
They're part of the
Muslim,
blame.
that's where we would assign.
But you can't
90%
use one
of the
wrong
blame.
to
And the
justify
point
that.
and the point I keep saying
No.
is
I'm
every
not saying
time
it's
somebody
right.
does
I'm not
that in
saying it's right.
society, they're wrong. Every time they blame the
Right.
black
I'm not
parents
saying
as the
that's right
reason,
either.
they're wrong.
What I'm saying is that the reason that narrative is effective because it's trying to remove the blame from, like you said, the bigger system, right? The education system, the legal system, the government system, right? It's trying to remove the blame from the bigger system. And you're right. I want to make sure we assign that chain of custody, right? This kid had parents, right? And these parents live in a community, and these parents, probably went to a church with him, right? And they had coworkers, that would see this kid, and this kid had teachers. There is a chain of custody. This kid, escaped to become this terrible person, and we need to make sure we
Hold on.
we do.
Hold on. I get it. Hold on. I'm gonna stop it right here because all we're gonna do is keep cycling the same way.
Yeah,
let's
move on from
you
that.
believe the parents are to blame as a large chunk.
That's
I
okay.
get it. We're
That's
all
his
agreeing
thing.
that parents are part of it, but we need to move on to something other than saying the same thing because now we're at the point where we're literally just repeating the same points to each other in different words.
I want to get back onto the whole
nothing's changing at this point. So
want to
I'm
answer
gonna
Cal's question
change
about
the
redemption.
I'm gonna
Hey, I'm
change
still
the
the host.
topic leading
Hang on.
off of the way Kyle had us going in the correction into the more on the police-ish kind of
Redemption?
custody kind
with
of version
regards
of it.
to
All right,
so I want to read. I'm going to read Teresa's comment, and I'm going to go to Jay Zilla. Okay, Teresa commented. I tried to read when you guys comment live. I love it. I love interacting with you guys. So please keep it up. It says if you follow Christ, you have to believe all souls can be redeemed if they choose to. That is. I mean, obviously, I'm not a Christian, but I don't disagree with that sentiment that a person can be redeemed if they make that effort. Jay Zilla, I want to hear kind of your take on that, and I have some of my own opinions to offer.
Well,
not necessarily on Teresa's
I happen to be a Christian. How about
there
that?
you go.
No, but I agree with what Haji's saying as far as redemption, that on the onset of things, you have to be willing being the key term there, I believe, right? And what he sounds like is Daryl Davis, if you're familiar with his story. He's a black musician who shared a beer with a KKK member, and the KKK member's mind was blown. I had never had a beer with a black man before. Daryl thought he was joking, and then he was like, no, I'm serious. And he pulls out his card, his membership card, right? And he came back to him later with his ceremonial robes and his card. And he says, I want you to take this and burn it. And then that white guy got to work going in and basically affecting other people like a little virus. I'm sure the KKK would say. But the idea of just
anti-racist virus. Yeah.
Right. But the ideal of just redemption, being willing to be, to accept redemption if that young man shows repentance and 15 or so years down the line or whatever. And I believe that we have to start saying from the beginning, this is terrible, and I hope he's at least, repentful or whatever, right? I think we all need that because I'm sure if we're in a sticky situation, we're gonna want it. And so that's why me as a parent, I get a little bit, on edge when I hear, no, you got to blame the parents. Like, I understand that chain of command, and I literally put in the private chat, parents are the first line of defense. So they are the first ones you look at. I agree with Mr. Richard in the comments. You look at the parents, you look at that community, you look at the economic and the spirituality, like you look at all these things. But what this child did after failing to become an engineer like his parents was he broke the chain of command. He went above the parents, outside the community, into the world, the internet for answers. And the internet showed up with answers as the internet always does. And I think that's how we get there. And that's what we have to start looking at, and that's my spiel. That's why I'm running for president.
There you go.
All right, good day.
I'll vote for you.
Jay Zilla
Of
24.
Hair Club for Men. So,
Oh, in America.
Yeah, I hear that. Yeah, my take on it and the whole just on what do you call it? You know, the criminal justice system in general. If we don't believe in rehabilitation, we're just acting on a very primitive, and it's not that I'm not a vengeful person and I never feel that way about anything. I definitely do. I just know it's not a productive emotion to have. So you did this. We want vengeance. I want to feel better about what you did. I want to feel like in a society where we will get justice. And by that, I mean, I'm going to lock you up and throw away the key. And now I feel better. Right. That doesn't really help. That doesn't help families. That doesn't help the individuals that we're providing for a life for somebody behind bars in a nearly useless manner. Right. If we don't believe that people can be rehabilitated and re-enter society, we're really just wasting our time in terms of outcomes. And I try to think of it less in terms of, you know, again, what do I feel good about, but what is actually going to be the most productive thing on the meta level moving forward. And it's not about anything that's going to make me feel good necessarily. How are we going to get the best outcome from the inputs that we're putting in? It's not really any different from this Peyton kid who got into this radicalization. We want to blame one thing, we want to blame another thing. He operated within the incentive structures that he thought was available to him, and he made a choice, you know, and based on wherever the hell his mind got to at that time, and clearly mental health problems and the other things that are around him, that's the way he went. Our society will reliably, even if not frequently, will reliably turn out people like him. He's not an endpoint to radicalization. He's just another milestone. This is just another thing until the next one. You know, and then people talk about, you know, whether it's January 6th or the Christchurch shooter or Dylan or any of these other people, it's just the next act of extremist violence along the line. And until the incentive structures change, this behavior is not going to change, whether it's a few people, one or two, a crowd of thousands, you know, whatever it ends up being, like it's just going to keep happening until we all decide to get better and stop thinking emotionally about these things, which is incredibly difficult to
And
do.
the way we do that, we start punishing the parents. I'm telling you, if we start judging these white parents with these black kids, it will
there you
end
go.
this to the truth.
Everything's back to the
right
same
back.
point.
I'm telling
Back to
you,
the
man.
same point.
We start
Hey,
when
all
we
right.
start lighting
All right,
them
so
up. I'm
next-
telling you, it can change this real quick.
Next
Hey,
topic.
Real quick.
All right, so the next
Heads
part of
up,
the topic,
I gotta
next
roll.
line.
Yeah,
All right,
we're
I
about
gotta
an
roll.
hour and 30.
Okay, yeah, I had to cut out at 4:30. How much longer are you going?
Well, it's 3:35. We're about to wrap, honestly, I think. in
Yeah, I
terms
just
of
want to
the-
do
Okay.
one last
Is it-
like statement sort of thing
Sure.
for us as a closing out. All right, so we've all kind of hinted at it. Immediately after it happened, they were of course referring to him
Can't take you nowhere,
to him
okay.
as a white teenager
Yeah.
instead of as a adult. So this is a habitual thing that happens all the time. You know, a white kid can be a kid, a black kid can't be a kid. The same way that, you know, Michael Brown was an adult. They were both 18. So Michael Brown was an adult that may have tried to kill a cop. Meanwhile, this was a teenager who absolutely killed, 10 people. But he's still a teenager. You know, Trayvon Martin wasn't a kid. He was an aggressive black adult. You know, even Tamir Rice wasn't considered a kid when he was shot playing with a gun in a park. He was he was seen as a young adolescent,
Aggressor.
is the way they described him.
Blackmail, right? Yeah.
Not that blackmail is the way he was listed when they called. With the person that called him a blackmail. When they called him the thing, they called him a blackmail. They didn't say it's a little kid that got shot. Tamir Rice is one of the ones that is most triggering out of anything, because who hasn't played with a toy gun? And the idea that playing with a toy gun in a park is something that you are worthy of dying. During the same time frame in the last 2 months, there was a Hispanic woman who was having a mental episode that had a knife that was shot dead by a cop. There was a white dude who had a knife and stabbed 3 officers but was taken into custody. There was another black man that was shot in the back while he was running away, because they said he was running to
get a weapon. During that same time, there was a white guy who was in a physical fight with 2 officers that was taken into custody. During the same time, you have a man shot in the back of the head on the ground for resisting arrest. Resisting arrest when that's the only charge that he got. Meanwhile, there's a perfect example in that case and with the Hispanic woman where the officer can clearly tell that the person he's speaking to is not an English as a first language person, but they do never take that into account and still ends up killing the person. So along those lines, while I'm not saying that I wanted this kid to be shot when he was there. What I'm saying is the other people shouldn't have been shot as well.
Yep.
And every time this topic comes up, people go, so you think that he should have been shot? No, I don't think he should have been shot. I don't think the other people should have been shot either. I don't think the white dude that stabbed the 2 officers should have been shot. He should have been taken in custody the same way he was. He was having a mental episode too. I don't think the white dude that fought the 2 cops needed to be shot. He should have been taken into custody. I'm just saying that the black people that were doing the same thing and the Hispanic people are doing the same thing.
It just shows us the ability there to do it. Yeah.
That should be the first thing. This is is an obvious thing where you look at certain people as a threat and certain people not as a threat. And the simple fact that you are trying to say that in any situation, any of the black and brown people that were killed unarmed or armed with a knife were nearly as dangerous as the person holding an assault rifle and having killed 10 people pretty much says there is not a single thing that a black person could do that will ever make them not a threat in that kind of philosophy, in that kind of thinking. And until we practice the true purpose of saying everything, people are people, this is kind of a quick tangent as to the same way that the New York correctional officer that posted the whole clean up on aisle 7, clean up on aisle 9, 3, 11 joke of, oh, is this too soon? So he's getting in the process of being fired because that's an obvious racist not counting, because he posted at the end of that statement, this will weed out some Facebook friends, which he knew was going to weed out some Facebook friends. They just happened to be the ones that screenshotted it and then put it out so everyone else could see. But when they fire this man for being racist and making that statement, the place that they fail is they're not going to go review all of the comments and complaints against him for being racist. All the stuff that they didn't take action on because they didn't have any proof that he was racist, I can guarantee they're not going back to look at those files and be like, we took action, he's fired. They're like, yeah, but what about the other stuff that happened before? Oh, that's different. You mean before you knew he was racist? Yeah, but now you know he was racist. Yeah, so you don't assume that he was racist when he was being racist to other people, just this one time when he was racist.
Right. Yeah.
The same way that cops have gotten fired recently in NYPD, there was the cops that got busted for doctoring a bunch of confessions and doctoring a bunch of stuff 20 years after they retired, and they got charged with perjury. Meanwhile, between the 2 of them, there are still 60 people that are currently locked up from these people. And instead of saying, hey, we need to give them a new trial or start all over again, they just go, no, those were okay. It's the other 5 that we have proof. Those guys, those were the ones that they only did it bad on these 5 times.
One of the clients that I advocate for, who's hopefully coming on to the show here pretty soon in a couple of episodes, named Scott McMillan, is under that same circumstance. You got someone who's 17 when they went to prison. They didn't do it. And they're 50 years old now, 33 years later. And oh my God, it's so heartbreaking for so many different reasons. But the prosecutor in their case has basically been exposed, as well as many of the coerced confessions that they caused to come about. And this person's still sitting in prison. There's no retroactive criminal justice here. I don't want to get on my own tangent.
No, that's honestly,
that's an episode.
This is kind of a good time to wrap. I do before I go. I want to thank you first, Daniel and Haji, for coming on. Haji, thank you for going out there physically. And as Jay had said, like kind of just taking that on, because I know that's emotionally, that's a lot of heavy lifting, right? But to go to you, Kyle, can you give us just like a brief demo what your podcast is going to be about? We are going to do a future episode together where I kind of give him a platform to introduce himself as he gets this thing rolling. But tell us about what you've been doing, Kyle.
No problem. So 2 things. I'm the executive director of the Adolescent Redemption Project. It's an organization, a nonprofit that lobbies for legislative change and our ability to sentence people to life without parole for crimes that they commit in their adolescence. So what that means is we're going to stop telling 50 or 60-year-old men that you're the same person who you were at 18 when you came in here. It's archaic. I don't know if we're better than that, but I am, and I interact with some people that are worth fighting for, and I appreciate you lending your platform to do that. As well, there's the Amplified Silence podcast, which you can find at amplifiedsiliencepodcast.com. That's the beginning of my effort in the interaction with all of these prisoners who I'll be talking about when I come on the show again, to ensure that their voice gets heard. There's so much talent, value, wisdom, and insight in there that's just dying behind bars right now while we're out here doing nothing about it or debating it. And I'm trying to make sure that, since I can't go and release the prisoners who I'm certain about, people who I would vouch for, they could come live with me or live with my mom. If I can't free those people, or at least convince everyone that they're worth a second chance, I can give them a chance to have their story heard and not die inside with them. That's what Amplified Silence Podcast is for. You can donate there, or you can contact me through there. Thanks for the plug.
Absolutely. Thank you for explaining that to folks, and I'm absolutely looking forward to working with you more on those things. Jay Zilla, what's your project you're working on right now? What are you part of?
So I am on 3 separate podcasts.
Man,
one, Let's Talk with Gales and Dean, 8 p.m. Tuesdays and Thursdays, What the Frap? Frap being the F word and crap combined. So the old word from my Vanderbilt University days. And then Urban Academia, Saturday nights, 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. And right now we're in the midst of studying the prison system. And every time we learn something, we just are scratching the surface, and it leads to several more branches. And it's just, we wanted to start this about a month ago, but we just can't stop like finding new details, new crevices, new questions. So that'll start probably June, July.
gotcha.
But yeah, I'm just happy to be here. You can find us in Spotify, Apple iTunes. Visually, you can find us Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter. The best place to go is YouTube. You can get everything at the What the Frap podcast YouTube channel, and then we kind of branch out from there.
Cool, man. Cool. Thank you everyone for coming on. If you guys know me, Fermenting Opinions, you can find us on YouTube, iTunes, Beyond Pod, all those normal places. We're on Facebook, all those good things. I've got more stuff coming up. I think I'm actually debating a couple of apologists on Friday, so have that to look forward to. If you guys get into the philosophy of religion, I do what I want on here. We're mostly politics. I jump into philosophy of religion when I want to, which is what I'm doing. Thank you guys for coming on. Super heavy topic. But yeah, this was a really incredible conversation. I really enjoyed it. I hope it gets to the people. And y'all be good. I'm David Poseidon, Running Opinions. We'll see you next time.